What's going on, guys? Another edition of the Connor and Mark Show. Today we're doing a Phillies preview. We have Graham Foley here, who's the Philadelphia. He works for the Philadelphia social media for the Philadelphia Phillies. You can follow him on Twitter. It's at Graham Foley to get your Twitter handle. Was it exactly?
It's at Graham_Foley3.
Okay, my bad. I knew it wasn't
not
exact.
a fun one.
No, I know it was off the top of my head. I forgot to write it down. But getting into it, man, we're 2 days. We're recording this on Tuesday, and we're 2 days out for the home opener against the Atlanta Braves. Really, it's obviously a lot different because you were working there last year, and the pandemic hit in March, and there was a lot of moving pieces with how the season got underway later in the summer. But now we're full throttle, getting ready to go April 1st for the opening day. Talk about your experience and how excited you are for Phillies baseball being back.
Yeah, I'm thrilled it's back. It was a long spring training, and it was a weird off season because in the beginning things are moving so slowly, and we didn't know what the COVID situation would look like, how the season was going to turn out. Now that there's a full season happening, there's going to be fans in the stadium. We signed Didi, we signed JT, like we bolstered the bullpen, and it just seems like there's more optimism now for the team and for everything around Major League Baseball. So I'm just so excited to get going. And then like on a personal end too, like I was really like an intern last year where I was doing like a few things here and there, and I had my own responsibilities, and then COVID hit and I was really kind of thrown to the back burner a little bit just because there's so many things that were already being done by the full timers. And now I'm getting a lot more responsibility. If you tweet at the Phillies, it's probably me tweeting at you back now, and it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
And thanks again, Graham, for coming on. Obviously, very exciting time here. We have, obviously, as we alluded to, a full MLB season on the horizon. But, with that, and I know you did mention a little your day-to-day changing, but with, the very shortened season last year, now the 162-game season, is there anything different that you might expect down the line as we get deeper, obviously into August and September?
With me personally, or with like the team in Major League Baseball?
With you personally, with with your role, with how it would change from last year to this year.
Yeah, it's gonna be totally different. But the one thing is, like, I'm still so new to the team and to baseball that like I'm still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and just excited for the season. And all my coworkers are like, "You have no idea what you're about to get into. It's gonna be a grind. It's gonna be long. It's gonna be tiring." So I know by, especially August and early September, that's when they say it really hits you before the playoff chase and stuff. That it's going to be tiring. And so, it's such a fun challenge to, as someone who consumed social media as a fan for so long, to see how teams kind of try to stay fresh and stay connected to their fans throughout a season that's this long and this tiring, and especially if they're not winning all the time. So it's going to be like a fun challenge to now be on the other side of that and try to keep up, a positive attitude and, connect with things as they change. If fun things happen, like, the bamboo situation a few years ago with Brad Miller and stuff like that, like capitalizing on little things like that. I expect that to be a lot of what happens in that time of the year. But and I also know that, we really don't know what it's going to look like from here on out just because of COVID and stuff. So like right now, my duties are live tweeting just about every other game, and then being there for support in, posting or coming up with ideas. We just launched a social media page for Citizens Bank Park, and I'll probably be doing a lot of that stuff. And then, a couple months from now, I could be on the field doing Instagram stories and live content with our, DSLR camera and stuff like that. So it's going to be all up in the air, but I know primarily I'll be doing live tweeting. I'll be writing for our blog. I'll be podcasting and, just a little bit of everything, which is really fun.
I'm guessing you're happy you don't see sign JT anymore in your feed when you're
Oh
constantly
my
tweeting
God.
out.
That was honestly the most fun week too, because I was like, we have to like hit people back with this stuff. So
Yeah.
I spent one Friday night replying. I bookmarked maybe 200 signed JT tweets. I just went back and replied to all of them. We did. And CBS3 picked it up and talked about it. I was so excited, but just fun stuff like that. And that I think it was so tiring to like put out like a blog post that I was really proud of and just see signed JT or like, we won't go back. But because of how big that passion was from the fans once we did sign him, it just was so much fun, and we couldn't do anything wrong, and it was really cool.
Well, I saw this meme on Instagram. It's like the Philadelphia Eagles intern like posting stuff, but he has to see like fire Howie like 24/7. He's just doing this. So I immediately thought of you in the moment of JT. But getting into the team, like I said, they signed JT, they signed Didi, they added guys to the bullpen like Archie Bradley, and obviously Connor Brogdon is an interesting young name, and also adding starters like Matt Moore and Chase Anderson who's going to be filling out the starting rotation. Looking at this team as a whole, especially in this NL East, what do you think? What do you make of this team and where they stand in the division?
Yeah, I think it's really fun watching or reading all these previews and stuff for the season, because I think they're really flying under the radar, and I hope I don't come off as too much of a homer. I'm gonna obviously work for the team, but like I really think this is a very talented team. And if they were playing in the NL Central, I think you're talking about them as a potential division winner, but instead they're playing in the NL East. And because of that, I'm seeing third place and fourth place as our projections. And it's kind of frustrating, but it's also kind of nice to kind of fly under the radar. But I think they really did a lot in positions that they really needed to. Like you said, like this bullpen, last year's bullpen, we all know, was historically bad. I think even an average bullpen would have brought that team not just to the playoffs, so we need to win one more game, but they would have easily made the playoffs with just a normal regular bullpen. And now you look at this bullpen with Alvarado throwing 101, and now you're not relying on Vince Velasquez to be a starter. You're putting him in a more relaxed role in the bullpen where he can maybe be a sixth starter if needed. It seems like it's a lot more stable finally, and I think this is a team that's really talented. Offensively, we saw that last year. When you have a guy like Alec Boehm, who we knew was going to come up and do some things, we didn't know how great he was going to be. That's such a huge addition to Didi and Gene, who are your 7 and 8 potentially, and it's really it's a good lineup offensively, and I think they really bolstered the positions that need pitching, and I think they're solid. I think this Mets team is getting so much hype, and I get it, but I think the Phillies can go toe to toe with the Mets for sure.
Well, I mean, let's just point out they're the Mets, so we'll see how this season goes.
Right.
But building off that point, obviously, Alec Boehm is one of the centric parts of this team, aside from Bryce Harper and Hoskins. There's really a lot of bat power throughout this lineup. But on the other side of his position, I guess you could say defensively, he was getting a little criticism last year of how he was playing early. How do you think he'll play this year, translating not only to the defensive side, but also the offensive side, with Archie Bradley putting a big expectation on him, as well as the rest of this infield? You have Didi and Gene. And how do you really think it's going to bolster this lineup in, again, a very competitive NL East division?
Yeah, it's tough because you don't want to put too many expectations on him either, because it was a shortened season. Who knows what it's going to be like on him 162 games. And the last thing I'd want is for everyone to expect him to be this all-star, and then he doesn't do that well and people give up on him, and fans can be really intense with stuff like that. But there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. Defensively, he was definitely having some troubles early on. But it seemed like I felt like there were so many difficult plays that he didn't pull off that people didn't appreciate the ones that he did pull off. And this spring training, because I had to watch every single game. I think his defense is really flying under the radar because he's making the routine plays every time now. And he made a couple of flashy plays with some plays in foul territory and catching some hard line drives and stuff. It's tough to adjust to major league hitting, especially when it's a year like last year. That I feel like you kind of throw that out and see what he can do starting fresh this season. I think there's reason for optimism because he's so athletic and he's so tall, and he really is at a position that suits him well, where he's got good enough mobility, he's got a great arm. I'm willing to kind of go in with an open mind for him defensively, and offensively. I mean, he was just spectacular last year. So I think what's great about him is you can really put him in any part of that lineup, and he's going to bolster it a lot. If he's batting 5, he's really going to give, whether it's Hoskins or JT in the cleanup spot, a lot better pitches to see. He could even bat cleanup, and because he drives and runs, he hits line drives, and you have Bryce Harper there at the 3 spot. He's going to get a lot better pitches to see now. So I think Joe Girardi is a great guy to have in this position where he can be really creative with who he moves around. But having someone like Alec Boehm who can hit for power, who can hit line drives, and just hits consistently, it's going to be massive, I think, this year.
Yeah, Bryce Harper's going into his 3rd year, and there's been no all-star appearances. But listen, I think he's probably one of the best athletes in the city of being able to make a connection with the fans, whether it's like a Clearwater shirt or whether it's like the Philly Fanatic cleats. I think that a lot of people like him, and I think he's a lot, really good with the fan base and all. But I think ultimately it does start to run out at a time where they haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. And obviously he's been up and down, but we've seen him obviously, bat really well and then sometimes not. What do you think the expectations are for him this year? And where do you think, how big of a key of the cog did he play for the Phillies making the postseason?
Yeah, no, I think the expectations are always going to be extremely high with him because he's the one everyone looks to. He's become the leader of this clubhouse. When he's doing something like recruiting a guy like Kinsler to the bullpen, who could have made more money somewhere else, but now is really filling a position of need. I mean, he's going to be your main selling point for free agents. He's going to be your main selling point for the fans. And now he's just got to produce on the field. And last year, he started off so hot that, you wondered what he could have done over an entire season. because he really cooled down toward the end of the season when, we really needed him. But he's looked so good this spring training. He had 5 home runs. He crushed one in the rain the other day. It seems like everyone he's hitting is a bomb. And that was after coming off some back soreness. There's a good explanation for his play dropping last year. He had horrible back pain that he just battled through. He seems to be totally clear of that. I expect a lot out of him. I don't want to put too many expectations on him either, but he's someone that you're able to do that to. He knows he's a superstar. He knows he's expected to be a superstar. And I don't think there's any reason you shouldn't put his name up there with Acuna and Soto and Bellinger as potential MVP candidates this year. And I think if the Phillies make the playoffs, it's going to be because Harper hits more than 40 home runs this year and really leads his team. And he was great defensively too, which we really didn't expect. If he can do any of that, that's awesome. That's a bonus. But he's got to lead the way with the bat, and it's got to be with power for sure in that 3 spot.
I think we would. I think we got to continue here because this is Philadelphia and it's a city of expectations and no more other than a team expectation here. With the Phillies coming in as their win total for the season is over under 80.5 wins. Last year they got 28 wins in 60 games, which would average between 75 and 80. I'm not a math guy, so don't quote me. But do you see this? Do you see this team this year? Obviously we're really talking about a complete team. I would say, upgrading the bullpen, bringing back a lot of the same bats, younger guys having one more year of experience. Do you think this team in a 162-game season, I know they struggled down the stretch in the past few years, but do you see them getting over that 80.5 win total this year?
Oh, I would smash that over. I mean, I really would, to be honest.
My man, the over.
You got to hit the over. I think the only reason, it is that low is just because they're going to play so many games against the Mets and the Braves. And, you can't forget about the Nationals and the Marlins are a playoff team. That's the tough part. But I think they're going to win a lot of games because, like you said, if you average out what their win total was from last year, you're going to be just under 80 games. And that was with historically bad bullpen. Jason Stark did a great article for The Athletic about how if the Phillies just had an average bullpen, they would have been one of the best teams in baseball last year. This is a really talented lineup that I think to the Phillies' advantage is not getting the respect it deserves because of how bad the bullpen was and how they just look at the results and saw the L's. So, the only thing that holds me back from thinking that they're going to, easily get over 80 is just that they're playing in such a tough division. But this team is much too talented and much too well coached to be, an under 500 team. So I personally feel really confident they're going to at least do that. And they're going to be, if not, in the division race, they're definitely going to be in a wild card race.
I believe we had John Kincaid on last week, and he brought up an interesting stat. He said that the Phillies were second in the MLB, right behind the Dodgers in leads held last season. So it puts in perspective, man, the bullpen must have been really bad last year. How many blown leads late in games in the 8th and 9th inning? It really puts in perspective. But going into pitching, the starting rotation is interesting because they bring in Anderson, they bring in Moore, rounding out the back end. Spencer Howard doesn't get the start in one of the top 5, which I thought was a little bit surprising. But I believe he's in a minor leagues right now. They sent him down, but so look, right now it's gonna be Nola, obviously Wheeler, then Eflin, and then rounding out with Moore and Anderson. What do you think about that starting rotation and the expectations for obviously Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin at the top, and then for the veterans guys like Moore and Anderson at the back?
Yeah, and what you said about Spencer Howard too, I think we kind of got the sense that spring training went on that, it wasn't, Howard came out and his velocity was up, which was really the most concerning thing when he had his first starts in the majors last year, that, he still has great stuff, but, the velocity wasn't there. And, if he doesn't have that, he's going to get hit by major league hitting. The velocity was back up in spring training. So there's a lot of things that you want to be excited about when it comes to Spencer Howard. But I think it just made sense to start him in the minors, get, more regular pitching appearances and then come back up sometime middle of the season, late in the season. We'll see, especially if they do need like a 6th man in that rotation, because it's a long season for guys that didn't play in a long season last year. So I don't think there's any reason to be discouraged with Spencer Howard starting in the minors. I think that was really the plan all along. And I think he needs to be, a solid major league pitcher this year, because the Phillies are going to have to count on him at some point. Don't know when, if it's an injury or if it's just fatigue down the stretch, but he's going to have to step up, and I'm excited about that. But this rotation, I mean, I think people forget the rotation really wasn't the issue last year, even though you had a guy like Vince Velasquez who was in the 3 starter, who's now in the bullpen. So that's another area that's been totally bolstered. Zach Eflin, I think, is a really solid number 3. And, he showed the last couple of years what he can do. He kind of switched up his mechanics. He went away from some coaching styles that he didn't think worked for him. And he's been really solid. To have him as number 3, behind what you already know Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler can do. I think it's a really good top three. And, it's I feel like naturally whenever I talk about this starting rotation, I kind of just gloss over Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler because you just expect them to be great. But they need to be great because that's such a huge area for this team. You can't, the bullpen might be better, but you can't rely on going to the bullpen that often. You have to have solid starts at the 1 and 2 spot and really the 3 spot from Zach Eflin. But I think you can expect that because they've shown you they can do that consistently. And I'm excited to see what Zach Wheeler does too, because I think he came last year as more of a contact pitcher, and then he was striking guys out like crazy. And he really didn't expect that. And I want to see what he does this year, building on what was really a career year for him last year. But Matt Moore and Chase Anderson are really intriguing because Chase Anderson, I think expectations were kind of low. It was just, a veteran on a deal. He needs to prove himself, and he pitched really well in spring training. Who knows if that translates to regular season games and the lights are the brightest, but he's someone who's really intriguing. And if he, is pitching well in the back end of that starting rotation, that's massive. That's something that I don't think even this front office expected coming in and early signing him. And Matt Moore too is another guy. He was a number 1 overall pick. He had, such great expectations. He really kind of tapered out, but he went to Japan. He looked really good in Japan. And now here he is in spring training. He didn't have the best couple starts toward the end of it, but early on in spring training, he was striking guys out left and right. He looked really good, really efficient too. You don't need as much from Anderson and Moore, but from what they've shown us in spring training, that's huge to shore up the end of the starting rotation.
Yeah, and staying on that pitching, the rotation and the bullpen, a lot of these guys have been brought in under the new regime of Dave Dombrowski, and obviously a big move in the front office. How confident are you if this team really is competitive or exceeding expectations when it comes around the trade deadline that Dave Dombrowski will be able to go out and acquire talent to propel this team to be a competitive playoff team?
Yeah, that's one of the greatest parts about this offseason. You brought in a guy like Dave Dombrowski, who just kind of gives you a lot of confidence in there. Because especially of all the things he's able to do, being able to pull the trigger on a trade is not something I'm afraid he's going to be gun shy about. He's shown in the past, he really not only knows, not only is he not afraid to make those deals, but he's really smart at finding the right ones. And I think he got a lot of flack from Red Sox fans that I'm friends with, because their farm system is just in shambles now because he made such great trades. But they won a World Series. Yeah. Like every trade that they made where they gave away these prospects that, that fans are upset about, they were huge players in them winning the World Series. And I think any Phillies fan listening to this podcast would trade a World Series for a couple of years of mediocrity after the last ones that we've faced for the last 10 years. So I think he's already made a lot of good deals, good typical Dombrowski deals with Matt Moore, with Chase Anderson, with Kinsler, with finding guys who just need to prove themselves and giving them a short-term deal to do that. And if, we'll see if they prove themselves and they have to be re-signed next year, that's a problem for next year. In the meantime, find guys who are hungry, who are talented, who need to be given a chance, and give them that chance. I think that's what's really going to help this team be stable to start the season. And then once, like you said, that deadline comes around, I really expect them to be able to, find the assets we need to make a big move. And it might not always be the flashiest move. A lot of the deadline moves he did in 2018 with the Red Sox were more of the Joe Blanton, Matt Stairs in 2008 trades, where you don't know that much about them and you don't think they're that great. You want the Manny Ramirez and you want to have that flashy big win. You want you just want that big piece. But I think he's able to find those little pieces that are going to be, in the end of October, pitching well or hitting well and solidifying this lineup.
An interesting name is Mickey Moniak. We saw in spring training, he got sent down to AAA, and Hazley and Quinn are going to be starting for center field. What do you think about Mickey? Because they looked physically bigger in spring training, and obviously he hit a lot better because he got caught up last year, and he looked overwhelmed, to be fair. And he was pretty young. He's only, believe he's only 23 at this point. So he's still pretty young, and he's a lot younger than some of the prospects they've had now. So what do you think the expectation is for him? And do you think if he starts raking in AAA, do you think he finds a role here in the middle of the season or closer to the end of it?
Yeah, I absolutely think he can come up at any point this season, especially because this is, he can play center field. And that's a position that, we're expecting a platoon. We're expecting no, one solid starter. And we'll see what kind of happens. But we were hoping going into spring training that someone like Quinn or Hazley was just going to take a hold of that position and run with it. That really didn't happen. But Mickey Moniak was just a really great story in the spring where he was hitting home runs. He was hitting line drives. He was making plays in the field. And this is a guy who obviously had such great expectations as the number one overall pick, but really was regressing, it seemed like, in the last couple of years, or at least not progressing as fast as the Phillies would have liked him to. And this was a big spring, we knew, going into the spring for him. And he really showed out. Him getting sent to the minors really isn't, I think, an indictment on his play in spring training. I think he showed everything he needed to show. But he got some time in the majors last year, and he was able to contribute here and there. But you can tell his bat speed really wasn't up to major league speed, and even his defense. He just needs a little more fine tuning. So I think him going to AAA, playing every day with no expectations against the Mets and the Yankees, minor league teams, until May when the season actually starts. I think that's going to be great for him. And there's going to be injuries. There's going to be holes in this utility bench role. And I think that he showed in spring training that, with just a little more fine tuning, he can absolutely do that. So I would expect him to be up at some point this season.
Yeah, and I know you just mentioned the utility position as well as the bench position. And just looking at the starting lineup here, or the opening day roster, you have Brad Miller, which is, Philly legend, returning. You got Ronald Torres. You have showed some good flashes last year of consistency. What do you think of this bench, and do you think their depth could really propel them, later in the season in this NL East division?
Yeah, I think that was really an issue last year too. Like there just wasn't a lot of depth off the bench, and then you had guys like Hoskins, who was getting hurt later in the season, and you didn't have guys who could step up and fill those roles. And who knows if this bench can do that, but you definitely feel a lot better about it going into the season with a guy like Matt Joyce, who is a veteran. He's been around. He can not only mentor, but he can also just hit the ball pretty well. You saw it in spring training. He was another really great story, especially early on, and really leading this team. And I think you feel good about having him there. Like you said, Brad Miller, for a social media person, that was a lot of fun because we got to do all the bamboo stuff again, and fans are just super excited. You don't expect that much excitement from signing a bench player, but there's a reason for it. He really had a great season when he was with us. That bamboo stuff, it wasn't just fun. It was him taking control when the Phillies needed someone to take control off the bench, and leading to a win streak. And like you said, there could be a moment where that needs to happen this year. And there's depth there now. And plus, we have this whole series of mic'd up episodes on our YouTube channel, which you can always go and check out on youtube.com.
Definitely go check it out. Yes.
I'm always going to plug it.
Out. But, always plug it.
Always plug. And
Connor and Mark show is a place for plugs.
And Brad Miller had a really good mic'd up where it was surprising, like how much he was coaching guys like even like Rhys Hoskins, who has been in the league for a few years, and Scott Kingery, who he's going to be working with a lot, especially if he comes up from the minors later on the season, which we expect him to. So having almost like an extra coach there in Brad Miller is great, but he can also really contribute. And then Ronald Torres is another guy who Joe Girardi really liked. He was with him with the Yankees, and we thought he might kind of get some extra playing time because Girardi likes him so much, but he really showed out. He made a lot of great plays. He played at second base a lot. He looks really solid, especially defensively for a team that needs to get better defensively. That's no secret. So having him again as someone who can just be there every day and be teaching skills, but also just come off the bench in the pinch. And he can run too. I think he's a really valuable piece, and someone else who we didn't expect that much from him going into spring training, and he really showed out. And a very Dave Dombrowski move for sure.
All right, I'll end with this prediction for Thursday. It's going to be the opener at 3 p.m. Noah's going to be on the mound for the Phillies. I think Fried's going to be on the mound for the Braves. So Phillies baseball is back Thursday. Prediction, what do you think happens? And then what do you think happens at the end of the year? Do they make the playoffs?
Well, first of all, it's definitely a W on Thursday. There's no way they lose the home opener. I mean, sure, that's happened before, but
yeah.
The Phillies and the Braves on opening day, for some reason, the Phillies find a way. It seems like at home.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to 2019 and how fun that first series was. But also, Max Fried's a guy the Phillies have had success with in the past, and this lineup needs. The biggest thing is this entire team needs to hit the ground running because they're going to play the Mets and they're going to play the Braves and they're going to play the Cardinals like a ridiculous number of times. I think it's like 19 times or something their first 25 games or so, something like that. Like it's a crazy number of games you're playing against the teams that are going to be competing with you either for a wild card or for the division by the end of the year. So there's no time to waste, and they know that. That's something that has been preached to them over and over again. So if there's any team that's going to come out sluggish out of the gates, I don't expect it to be the Phillies. I think they know what's at stake. I think everyone's really hitting their stride physically. A lot of guys coming back from injury, like JT now, and even Hoskins to a certain extent. He was doing a lot of rehab over the summer. They're all ready. So I think they're going to come out of the gate swinging, and I think they're going to win at least 2 of 3 from the Braves this week. That might be wishful thinking, but if they want to compete in the NL East, they've got to start strong in April. And it's hard to predict this division because my hopeful goal is that the Phillies are right in there with the division. Who knows if they get it, but they fall back on a wild card spot. And that the Mets become the Mets and they just totally fall apart. Like I'm thinking 2011 Eagles dream team and just have no chemistry at all. That's my dream. I think what's going to happen is you're not going to have a clear NL East division winner until late September. And I think the Phillies will be right in the mix for that. And I think there's going to be at least, definitely 3 playoff teams from the NL East. I don't know if it's the Nationals, Phillies, Braves, and Mets, or if it's I don't know which one of those 4 is going to get left out. Sorry, Marlins. I know you were a playoff team last year. I don't think they have it this year, but I think it's going to be a really fun year. I think that's going to be a big test, and I think whoever comes out of that NL East on top is going to be battle tested and ready for the playoffs. So I'm going to predict a playoff season for the Phillies. I don't know if it's division or wild card, but I think we're going to have rally towels in September and be right in the thick of it for the first time in a while.
I know fans
beautiful.
I know fans miss October baseball, but at least they get to have April baseball coming up soon. You can follow Graham at Twitter at Graham_Foley3. Graham, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we get a Phillies win on Thursday.
That'd be great. And listen to my podcast too. I'll plug my own podcast.
Anything else you need to plug, go right ahead, man.
Well, maybe I'll set the record for plugs in one podcast. No, but and we're releasing a podcast tomorrow called the Leaving a Legacy, the Dick Allen story about Dick Allen, whose number was retired by the Phillies last year. It's like a 45-minute audio documentary narrated by Ryan Howard. I talked to like Mike Schmidt and Gary Matthews and a bunch of guys about Dick Allen. So if you want to get your baseball fix on your last day before Phillies baseball, there it is. It'll be online.
I agree 100%. Make sure you follow them on social media. Make sure you shout out the Phillies on social media and check that out as well. This is Connor and Mark Show. We'll see you guys next week.